Hello everyone, hope you're having a great day. My name is Vince and thank you for joining me for another episode of Secrets of the Trails. Today we're in Garrett, Pennsylvania, ready to check out the Great Allegheny Passage segment from Garrett to Rockwood. The Garrett trailhead is at gap mile 36.5. Our segment ride to the Rockwood trailhead is, according to the Great Allegheny Passage Conservancy, 7.1 miles. However, if you track your ride by Google Maps, it looks like this. Google wants to take your ride another 0.2 of a mile around the trailhead off of the actual trail and along Waterworks Road. If you follow Waterworks Road, you'll end up back on the official trail, but you'll be doing another short bit of distance that the Conservancy doesn't calculate. So as per usual, I'm going with the official Gap Conservancy measurement since we'll be following their ground level mile markers. The Garrett trailhead is tucked away between the trail and the Castleman River. However, accessing the trail can be a bit tricky if you haven't been here before. This is Jackson Street, also called PA Route 653. It's the main drag through Garrett. Whichever way you access Jackson Street, either coming east from Rockwood or coming west on the Mason-Dixon Highway from US 219, you'll turn here onto Church Street, following the road across the bridge and left onto Jefferson Street, then an immediate right onto Berlin Street. After crossing the Castleman River, the trailhead is just to the left. You can see that the trailhead parking is marked with the typical Gap signage. But come prepared. It appears that this small convenience store at the Valero gas station here at the intersection of Jackson Street and the Mason-Dixon Highway is the only retail outlet in town for water or snacks. The trailhead itself features a large gravel and grass lot, unpaved and unmarked except for that paved pad marked with 2 handicapped accessible spaces. Overall, this lot can hold over 30 vehicles by utilizing the grass along the edges of the gravel lot and the back-to-back arrangement closer to the trailside that can account for about 15 of those 30 spots. The trailhead also features a toilet facility, a water fountain, covered seating, bike racks, and a bicycle repair station. So before we mount up and check out this trail segment, let's take a brief look at the history of this trailhead town, Garrett.
The town of Garrett is nestled between Buffalo Creek and the Castleman River. Its origins are inseparable from the rise of the railroad industry. The town was established in 1869 and was named after John Work Garrett, the influential president of the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad. The town soon emerged as a critical railroad junction point, which helped power the region's economic growth. The Baltimore and Ohio Railroad served as a means of transportation and a lifeline connecting communities and fueling industries. A vital part of this rail network was the Berlin Branch Railroad, initially built by the Buffalo Valley Railroad Company in 1871. This 8.5-mile branch, connecting the nearby town of Berlin to the main line through Garrett, was later absorbed by the B&O Railroad, enhancing Garrett's role as a crucial intersection in the expansive rail network. According to visitgarrett.org, the town prospered from the railroads and featured several hotels, an opera house, an art gallery, and a music studio. A trolley line connected Garrett with Myersdale. The Western Maryland Railroad came to Garrett in 1911, with its tracks laid on the southern side of the Castleman River. As the railroad era receded due to the advent of modern transportation, the Western Maryland Railroad and its holdings were eventually acquired by CSX. The tracks of the Western Maryland Railroad through the area were abandoned, and later the land was provided to the Regional Trail Corporation, ultimately resulting in the Great Allegheny Passage. The town of Garrett has continued to adapt, and while not as popular as in its railroad heyday, still plays a genial host to the region's visitors who use the trail system. And Garrett's adaptive spirit isn't over yet. Garrett has been tapped as a crucial link in the September 11th National Memorial Trail, a 1,300-mile multi-use and multimodal route that connects all the major memorial areas impacted on that fateful day. The September 11th National Memorial Trail will use Garrett as the transition point between the Great Allegheny Passage, itself named as part of the Memorial Trail, and the continuation of the Memorial Trail north from Garrett to the Flight 93 Memorial in Shanksville, using the old Berlin Branch Railroad's rights-of-way. Garrett is an example of small-town resilience and adaptability. It has a rich history, yet is eager to embrace its modern role as a gateway for outdoor adventures. Garrett remains a small town with a big story that continues to unfold and inspire.
Hope you enjoyed that brief look at the history of the town of Garrett, and now it's time to mount up and check out the Great Allegheny Passage segment from Garrett to Rockwood. So right after leaving the trailhead itself, we'll pass through a small tunnel-like underpass for Berlin Street. It's a little longer than the road surface above the trail, but it isn't lighted. But the treadway is paved. After exiting the underpass, you might be able to see some runoff of those rocks over there during certain parts of the year, and we'll be passing by a couple of different houses here. You can see the Castleman River on the right there. This is actually called Castleman's Gorge. And we're going to stop right here for just a second because I want to show you that's Brant's River access. Now, I dare you to do a Google search on the Castleman Gorge, and I'll bet the only thing that comes up is the famous one in Maryland affiliated with the Castleman River Bridge State Park. But this valley where Garrett sits is also known as Castleman Gorge. And right here at Brant's River access is where I've understood that many locals come to fish and utilize the river features around this area. Google Maps marks Waterworks Road with their green biking line, and technically this is true because you can actually ride that road all the way down to Berlin Street and also then connect with the gap itself. But at Brant's River access, there's a curious sight in the river. These 3 stone pylons sit in the river, which clearly indicates that there was a bridge right here across the river at some time in the past. But sadly, I haven't found much historical information about what type of bridge used these pylons, when it was constructed, and when it was removed, or even what the bridge would have been used for. ChatGPT, yes, I sometimes use ChatGPT too, tells us, quote, "The pylons are likely remnants of a former railway or vehicular bridge that once crossed the Castleman River. They serve as historical markers of the region's transportation industry, reflecting the engineering and construction methods of the time," and the quote ends. My guess is that it was a railroad bridge. A satellite view seems to indicate that this may have been a railroad bridge connecting to the Western Maryland Railroad, but of course, the exact history is unclear. So I'd love to hear from anyone who lives in the Garrett area who knows any specifics about the bridge that was carried along these pylons, because I'll definitely want to add that to the website. But we're going to continue on the Gap Trail at this junction here with Waterworks Road, basically where it ends and the gap continues. The treadway surface is primarily crushed limestone with an 8 to 10 foot average width. There are some paved portions such as the Berlin Street underpass that we just went over, and the last several tenths of a mile at the Rockwood trailhead east and west parking. We'll notice that just like many other trail barriers between the Deal and Confluence that we'll see in the next episode, there's either no mid-treadway barrier pole or one that's removable. And there are fences along the side that have the trailhead or trail access name on them. Another really cool feature along this segment are these wooden stakes with numbers and letters on them. Briefly, as we're riding past them, I'll let you know that these denote various geologic features that are present along this segment. I did a more extensive write-up on their purpose on secretsofthetrails.com, so do check that out. And we'll take a look at some of them as we go along. This one is the first one, and it is the Pottsville Sandstone Boulders. That marker is labeled L, and according to the information, this is called the alluvial fan. Around Gap Mouth 37.5 is one of the hidden gems along the Great Allegheny Passage. Pletcher Falls is a lesser known but very picturesque waterfall with its water cascading over the rocks above there and coming down into the pool that goes underneath the trail and out into the Castleman River. You can see that this is a nice area to stop because there are a few benches here to relax and just take in the peacefulness of the water cascading over the rocks. Now, while it may be small as far as waterfalls go, this is a serene and beautiful setting, and it provides a refreshing stop and a great spot to relax and just take in the natural surroundings. So I'm just going to shut up for a second and let you listen to the waterfall. Back on the trail, do want to give out that standard warning that this is one of those segments that are a little bit more rural than others and will have spotty cell service coverage. So just make sure that you plan for a loss of signal along the way. If you're using a trail app, obviously make sure you download your maps before starting. Oh, and make sure that you have enough battery too, because even though this is a short segment, you don't want your battery draining because your cell phone is constantly trying to find a signal unsuccessfully. We're going to come into Gap Mile 38. Mind your left. Now, you've probably figured out by now that when I'm recording this is after August, but I will tell you that a lot of the areas on the mountains here will tend to actually start shedding their leaves or having their leaves turn a little bit earlier than other areas. Mind your left. This one is labeled J, and it says it's the Castleman Gorge landslide area.
This marker is IGR3. This is festooned crossbedding. Apparently the ripples in the rocks are caused by petrified sand dunes, and abrupt changes in the weather directions and waves and things along that line caused all of this nice ripple effect. Pretty cool.
About this same spot above the trail, and even though we can't really see it, are a couple of small wind farms and a coal mine pit. Remember that this whole area was heavily mined for coal back in the day. If you track your rides with a trail app, you'll notice that there are portions of this trail that actually hug the Castleman River fairly closely, but other sections where the trail goes more inward from the river. Along the way, you'll actually notice that there are some, I call them islands in the stream, so to speak, but if you look at them, you can see them better usually on Google Maps or your favorite map app. But sometimes, depending on the time of year, you may be able to peek through the trees and see them. They're islands within the river itself. Here's another one of the geologic formations. This one is HGR4. This is Lick Run, although it doesn't look like it's run right now because there's no water in it. But this is also the anticlinal axis for Negro Mountain, which is pretty much what we're standing on right now. I didn't actually know what an anticlinal axis was until I looked it up, but you can actually look it up on the post about this segment on the website. We're coming up to mile 40. And most of this segment of the trail is fairly flat, with the exception of the last several miles or so. There is a distinct upslope, but it's not a horrible one. Very easy to navigate. And just past mile marker 40, the marker for G, and they're calling this Burgoon sandstone. As with many portions of the more mountainy areas of the Great Allegheny Passage, you'll have these interspersings of sunlit area as well as nice shaded spots that you can have a nice breeze to cool you, especially on hot summer days. And as you can see, this is definitely a mild upslope. I'm going to say maybe this is about 0.5%. And again, I've mentioned a couple of episodes ago, surveyors, come on out and prove me right or wrong, please. Coming up to another marker. This one's an interesting one. FGR5. This is Wimp's Gap Fossil Quarry. And right here at mile marker 41 is another one. This is called a Mach Chunk Formation. This is the letter E. So if you're tracking, if you have the outdoor geology classroom handbook, I guess, you can actually see all of these up close and personal just by coming on the trail yourself. So the last of our streams that we're going to see here, the first one that was Lick Run that we labeled earlier. This one is Schaefer Run, and just ahead there is called Stony Batter Run. Fortunately, it does look like there's some water flowing through there, not a whole heck of a lot, but I was up here, I think in June or July, and these things were dry. You can always tell when an interesting geologic formation or water area, that type of thing, is about ready to present itself anywhere here along the Great Allegheny Passage, because they usually have some place to sit and relax, except for Stony Batter Run. And this is Stony Batter Run. It's the last of the three streams that cross along this segment of the gap. Obviously, there's a lot more water flowing through that one. Unfortunately, this doesn't have any bench or anything else like that to sit on while you're checking out Stony Batter Run. But I will tell you that more often than not, you can usually tell on the Great Allegheny Passage where an interesting feature of some type awaits you on either side of the trail, because they will usually have a bench or two sitting next to it. And you can hear the CSX train on the other side. We can't see it because of the trees, but you can hear it. That is an active rail line on the other side of the river. You can tell we're getting a little bit closer to Rockwood because the treadway width is about 12 feet now. So a little bit wider. Coming up to mile 42. It's a busy day or a busy afternoon today. A lot of people using the trail today. Mind your left. Mind your left. And as I mentioned earlier, the upslope is getting a little bit more pronounced now. So like I said, there's definitely an upslope going into Rockwood. It's not horrible to navigate, but you can tell it's here. I'd say this one's probably about a 1%, maybe a 1.5%. There's another area that they call Pottsville limestone. That's marker G86. I think it was like really low to the ground there. And from mile 43 onward, you can tell that we're really getting close because we've got a little bit more of a berm over here. So the treadway width has definitely widened out. This is actually 14 feet. You'll also notice some wires ahead. And just off to the left here is a power transformer substation. And just after the power substation, there's this whole big gigantic pile of stuff. Kevin Geitzerman on his webpage, Waypoints of the Great Allegheny Passage, calls this the gob pile. And it's basically a large pile of waste rock and other debris from the past mining of a lower Katanning coal seam which ran through this area.
So we're getting close to the Rockwood trailhead.
This is the Husky Haven primitive campground. This is a primitive campground that used to offer multi-day gap trail users an excellent place to camp in addition to a location close to the amenities of Rockwood, but it's closed. I had a discussion earlier this year with one of the volunteers at the Rockwood Trailhead Visitor Center who confirmed that the campground is permanently closed as the former owners were apparently unable to maintain it. It doesn't appear that there are any plans to sell the property and or have someone other than the previous owners renovate and reopen it.
To the left of the trail opposite the campground is the area of Pedelec Mine Number 3. This is a rusty colored stream with polluted acid mine drainage. The marker, if you're following along the geology classroom text in the Waypoints of the Great Allegheny Passage webpage, is BGR8. But I don't see the marker here anywhere. But according to the coordinates given by Mr. Gesselman on his webpage, this is where it's supposed to be.
You can tell this segment actually has, similar to the Frostburg to Deal segment that had that little maintenance road on the side of the trail. Here's the actual trail. That was the maintenance road, obviously for the Husky Haven campground that's no longer in use. This area right here, just opposite of the east trail access that I like to call the eastern lot, is part of the lower Katanning coal seam. This is actually also marked on the geologic maps that you can see on the website, but for whatever reason, they don't have the marker here that they usually do. But what I'm told is that dark area all the way at the bottom of these large boulders and rocks is the coal seam. Just before we get to what I like to call the east lot, there are other features here just off of the east lot, including some seating areas, bike rack, the official Gap Rockwood town map, and a nice little seating area here that you can actually see at various times of the year over along the Castleman River. Fortunately, this is later in the season that we're filming this portion, so you can actually see the river. In the midst of June, July, these trees are so full of leaves, it's really hard to see. And there's also some cool bicycle art here, sponsored by the Rockwood area merchants. So we're coming into Rockwood, and this is what I like to call the eastern trailhead parking area. Space for maybe about 6 or 7 vehicles, unpaved, gravel, unlined. There is a handicapped access here though, but apparently no parking after that. They don't want people blocking the gate, but I don't know why, because the campground is no longer open. Basically using the road surface to get to Rockdale Road, and the western trailhead parking area is on the other side of the street. So obviously be careful. If you do want to actually partake in some of the amenities of Rockwood, you basically have to just go down here, cross the river, cross the railroad tracks, and there are a couple of eateries, etc., that we'll talk about next time. So we've reached the Rockwood trailhead, which is pretty interesting for a small town rural trailhead, but we'll delve more into that in the next episode. I hope you enjoyed this look at the Garrett to Rockwood segment of the Great Allegheny Passage. It's a sub 10-mile point-to-point trail segment that's easy to ride and offers a peaceful passage through lush forests, striking unspoiled river views, along with the serenity of a waterfall tucked into the rock face beside the trail. Overall, a very nice and peaceful ride. And that's all the time we have for today. Thanks for joining me, and I hope to see you next time for another episode of Secrets of the Trails. Have a great ride.